I was halfway through making coffee when Mia slid an envelope across the counter like it was a subpoena. She didn't say anything at first, just tapped the corner of the paper once, twice, the way she does when she's trying not to cry or laugh or throw the whole relationship in the dishwasher on the pots and pans cycle. Waffles, our golden retriever, decided this was a chew toy situation and tried to liberate the envelope with his teeth. I saved it, barely, and realized my hands were shaking, which felt dramatic considering the thing inside wasn't a court order, but it might as well have been. It was the email printout with our dog's DNA results, and even though that sounds like the punchline to a joke, for the last few weeks this little test had been the center of our universe, the moon that tugged at the tides of everything we said and didn't say. We didn't start out as the kind of people who would send saliva on a Q-tip to a lab to ask, essentially, does our dog love me or her more? We started at a farmer's market fighting over strawberries. She won the argument. I won the berries. Waffles didn't exist yet, there was just Mia with a messy bun and a sunburn and the smile of a person who would talk to every vendor like they were reuniting after years apart, and me, who used bitterness as a tasting note for greens and meant it. Our first date was coffee that turned into a walk that turned into dinner that turned into us delayed canceling our respective therapy sessions because for the first time in a long time we didn't want to hyperanalyze our own sentences. 6 months later we brought Waffles home from a rescue that described him as high energy with the emotional range of a theater major, and I swear to you I have seen actors weep less convincingly than this dog when you tell him the park is closed. He was pure sunshine and chaos. He ate 3 socks and a left crock that belonged to a visiting friend, and then looked at us like, I've made a mistake and I will never do it again, and then immediately did it again. He learned sit in 2 tries with Mia and in 17 with me because I said it like a question. We were a family that took turns holding the phone for photos at the dog beach and pretended not to care about likes while absolutely caring. We celebrated his first birthday with a dog-friendly cake that cost more than my phone bill, which is a sentence I didn't know I would ever say. We made jokes about him being our baby that weren't jokes, not really, because there is a specific kind of quiet that happens when you watch something trust you enough to fall asleep on your foot. If there had been a graph of his affection early on, it would have looked like a rainbow, a wedge for me, a wedge for Mia, a wedge for whoever held the treat bag. And then something shifted, not overnight but close. Waffles started choosing Mia's side of the bed, Mia's lap, Mia's voice. He'd glance at me when I said, come, and then trot merrily past me like he'd received my message and decided to forward it to someone more qualified. At first it was a joke. I'd say, he's a mama's boy, and Mia would smile and kiss me and the dog, and we'd all watch TV with that specific peace you get from the world being tidy. And then one morning Mia left for a run at 5:59 a.m., exactly 5:59, which will matter later, and Waffles sat by the door like a furry TSA agent watching a suspicious bag. He whined when she left. He whined until she returned. He whined at me for having the audacity to be a different person than the one he wanted. I started waking up before 6 out of spite, which is how you know love is absolutely unhinged. It also turned out that 5:59 a.m. was when Mia's ex, Jake, ran past our block. I discovered this in the most humiliating way possible, attempting to run with Mia and Waffles, gasping like a haunted accordion, only to watch Waffles rocket ahead as a very fit, very polite man in very short shorts waved and said, "Morning," like we were characters in the same wholesome commercial. Afterward, on the cool-down stretch, Mia said, "We just run into him sometimes," and I said, "Cool," which is the most neon sign in the world for not cool. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself that Waffles loving her more did not mean he loved me less. And then I tripped over my own shoes on the next run and Waffles kept going with Mia and Jake because of course he did, and I walked home by myself pretending I preferred it that way. I didn't bring it up right away because I didn't want to be that person who treats love like a scoreboard. But the scoreboard lit up in my head anyway. He sits faster for her. He heals for her. He looks at me like I threw the wrong ball even though it is physically the same ball. Little cracks appeared in sentences that were sturdy before. Did you feed him? started carrying tiny accusations like passengers. "Can we try training again?" became, "If you just did it the way I do it," and the end of that sentence lived in the air between us. Then, one night after we watched a couple on TV kiss like they were sponsored by dental floss, Mia paused the show, stood up, and pulled out a small cardboard kit. "I have an idea," she said. "Please hear me out." I laughed. "Not kindly. We're not making Waffles spit into a vial to tell us he loves you more." She shook her head. "It's not that. Well, it is kind of that, but it's also a breed panel, health markers, and something called a bonding index. They measure cortisol patterns and scent affinity and other science words I can't pronounce. We set some rules attached to it, and then we stop fighting about feelings and follow the data." She said, "Data, like a lifeboat." I said, "Feelings, like an anchor." But I was tired of the arguing we weren't having. I wanted a yes or a no from somewhere outside the mess of my head. So we made a deal: if the test leaned toward me, I'd take over the expensive food and the boring but necessary training class. If it leaned toward her, she'd stop consulting Jake for running routes and accidental training tips, and we put a curfew on phones because apparently my late-night doom-scrolling stressed the dog. I had notes about that last one and then didn't share them because I could hear my own voice sharpening like a knife. We opened the kit like it was sacred. Waffles, deeply respectful of sacred things, ate the first cotton swab and then looked ashamed in a way that made him look proud. We took a second sample and I held it over my head like a referee with a yellow card while Mia sealed it in the prepaid mailer. We kissed. Waffles sneezed in my face. We put the envelope in the mailbox and I imagined tiny lab technicians in white coats greeting it with tiny applause because someone, somewhere, would finally decide this for us. Waiting for a lab result is the hobby you never meant to have. I started refreshing my email like it owed me money. Mia started a whiteboard that said, "Waffles growth chart," with bullet points like, "loose leash walking, leave it," and, "stop eating socks." I declined to clarify whether that last one applied to me. We turned our living room into a training ground and our couch into a war zone of whispered strategy. We stopped kissing while brushing our teeth because one of us was always in a hurry to get to the dog's bedtime like we were going to miss the last train out of Anxietyville. At 5:59 a.m., we ran. On the third day, Waffles looped back to me in the park and nudged my knee until I put my hand on his head, and I nearly cried from the relief of being chosen for a task as thrilling as standing still. I also posted to Reddit, "AITA for being offended. My girlfriend wants a pup-ternity test to decide who our dog is more bonded to." The comments were a chorus of therapy and jokes. NTA but pup-ternity is comedy gold. Plot twist: dog loves the mailman most. You don't need a lab, you need boundaries. The last one lodged itself in the part of my brain where big, obvious truths go to marinate. Because even if the test landed in my favor, I'd still flinch when Mia said Jake knew a thing about heel cues, and even if the test landed in hers, she'd still bristle when I checked her phone. Love is not math. We were trying to turn it into math because math has answers you can point to. When the lab emailed, "sample received," we high-fived like teammates who just passed a crucial checkpoint. Then they emailed again 2 days later with a line I still say out loud when I need to laugh at myself: "We're unable to process due to foreign starch contamination." I read it twice. "Did you feed our dog the swab?" Mia asked, and I looked at Waffles, and Waffles looked at me, and I remembered letting him sniff it, just to be part of the process, and yeah, okay, maybe a little rice was on his tongue from the bowl he'd licked when I turned my back. We laughed because the other option was breaking up. We ordered a replacement kit. While we waited, everything that wasn't the test grew teeth. Jake texted Mia a link to a training video one morning and she said, "He used to work with a behaviorist, it's just information," and I said, "It's also your ex," and she said, "It's also our dog," and then we didn't talk for a whole Saturday because sometimes quiet feels like control. Sunday we made up and picked at the scab of the actual problem until it bled. I was scared the test would confirm a suspicion and not a fact, that Mia and Waffles would always exist in a circle I could only stand outside of. She was scared that every suggestion she made would be interpreted as an attempt to be in charge of everything, including me. We said we didn't want to be people who fought about a dog like the dog was a metaphor, and then we immediately continued fighting about the dog as if he were a metaphor. The second kid arrived, and we swabbed like professionals. The mail carrier, a woman with extraordinary patience and a forearm tattoo of a koi fish, watched us place the envelope very gently into the box and said, "You two are either sending off a scholarship application or you're the most intense pet parents on my route," and we said, yes. That night we slept like we'd conceded defeat to gravity. I woke at 3 a.m. and nudged Mia to tell her something I should have said sooner. If the test says he's more bonded to you, I promise I won't hold it like a winning lottery ticket you spent in front of me. And if it says me, we don't use it as a stick to beat each other with. She squeezed my hand. Deal. The next week weirdly softened. Maybe because we'd finally said the quiet part out loud, maybe because we started trying to be on purpose about kindness. I asked Mia to teach me the exact way she said, heel, and she asked me to show her the ridiculous British voice I used that made Waffles obey out of sheer confusion. I stopped checking her phone. She wrote, "No consulting X's," on the whiteboard under the growth chart and drew a tiny lock. We reintroduced kissing while brushing our teeth. We were still us, with all our jagged edges, but if before we'd been glass bouncing off tile, now it felt like rubber. Then the email landed on a Wednesday afternoon like a bird hitting a window. "Your results are ready." We opened it on the kitchen island with Waffles nosing his way between our elbows. The report was very official looking: breed composition, health markers, some curious pie charts. He was, to the surprise of approximately no one, a golden retriever with a minor streak of village dog, which the lab explained as a catch-all for dogs who learned their manners from chaos. The bonding analysis had its own bar graph, and Mia started to laugh before I did because she reads graphs faster. The bars were the same height. The note beneath said, "Your pet demonstrates by caregiver preference typical of multi-caregiver households with shared training consistency." I read it 5 times. It translated, in my heart, to, "He likes you both. Feed him and be nice." I cried first. Not a tragic sob, more like the kind of crying your body does when it's been holding a plank for a minute and someone finally says drop. Mia cried next. Waffles sneezed precisely and then licked both our faces and then tried to eat the paper, which felt spiritual. We didn't print the report to frame it like a diploma. We didn't text it to the group chat like a victory banner. We did something more significant. We took a photo of the whiteboard and wrote a new list called the Waffles Agreement, which included, in no particular order, shared training sessions we'd commit to without turning them into performance reviews, no more consultations about our life, phone curfews that were, "Don't be a raccoon about your phone at 1 a.m. rather than, "Charge your phone in the freezer," and a pact that if either of us started treating love like an algorithm we could outsource. We'd say so and then go for a walk, because 60% of our fights can be solved by the dog looking at a tree like it's famous. The test didn't fix us. It moved the furniture around so we could see the floor. That weekend we went to a trainer at the park, an older woman named Lila with forearms you only get from holding leashes attached to mistakes. She made us practice calling Waffles from opposite sides of the field. "He'll pick whoever is more fun," she said. "Be more fun." I yelled like a birthday clown auditioning for the CIA. Mia crouched and opened her arms and sang his name like a lullaby. He sprinted to her first because she is the kind of person everyone runs toward. Then he sprinted back to me without being called because I had the squeaky toy. Lila clapped once. "You're fine," she said. "He's fine. Work on your recall. Work on your recall with each other." We did. When I felt myself reaching for the invisible scorecard, I recalled myself to the present by touching Waffles' collar and feeling his pulse. When Mia felt herself cataloging my imperfections like she was building a case, she recalled herself by holding my face and saying one nice thing out loud. We were ridiculous. We were adorable. We were trying. Around then, the 4th of July arrived with its annual promise of widespread explosions in the sky. Waffles hates fireworks like they owe him money. We made a plan: turn up the TV, close the curtains, build a little fort of blankets, treats, and waited calm. A neighbor we'd lived next to for 2 years but only know as the lady with the hydrangeas, knocked to ask how we needed extra white noise machines. She had 3 and collected them like stamps. For an hour, Waffles did great. Then a cannon blast firework rattled the windows, bolted under the bed and wouldn't come out. I lay on the floor like a person in a stock photo about lower back pain and whispered, "Buddy, it's okay. It's loud but it's okay," and Mia lay next to me and did the same, and we stayed there until midnight, both of us half asleep on the carpet, the dog's breath hot against my wrist, the noise finally faded to a hum. When people say, the lab can't measure what matters, this is what they mean: cold floor under your hip bones, shared whispering, the stupid, gorgeous willingness to be uncomfortable together for the sake of one nervous heartbeat that trusts you to make the world small and safe. 2 weeks later the lab sent an update correcting a tiny error that suggested Waffles was 3% raccoon. It turned out he was not, in fact, part trash panda, though he did immediately steal a granola bar from my backpack to maintain his brand. We laughed so hard we scared him into dropping it. Mia joked that Raccoon would have explained his habit of washing toys in the water bowl and then presented them to us like damp balls. We didn't save that email either. We saw Jake one more time, at a coffee place where everyone pretends to read books and actually use books. He waved. We waved. There was no flare of jealousy in my chest, which felt miraculous, like discovering your phone battery at 70% at 5 p.m. He said, "You guys look good," and I said, "We're practicing your call," and Mia said, "We've got it from here," and it was as simple as that. No villain, no final boss, just a person who once collided with and then didn't anymore. We went home and made pancakes and fed Waffles a tiny unseasoned pancake because he's a good boy, because I am in charge of being fun in the recall exercise and needed leverage for later. The last wobble came on a Tuesday after a long day where everything was bumped. Waffles refused to heel for me and then executed a perfect heel for Mia like he'd been paid. The old panic woke up, groggy but hungry. I felt the urge to reopen the scorecard, to ask the tiny god of fairness to step into our kitchen and render a verdict. Instead, I said, out loud, "What am I doing wrong?" Mia didn't gloat. She put 2 fingers gently on my shoulder and said, "You're holding your breath." I exhaled like I'd been underwater. Tried the cue again. He melted into place like he'd been waiting for me to take the invisible backpack of expectations off and just be here, in the room, with my dog in my person and the clicking of his nails on the tile. The relationship is not a montage of lessons learned and never repeated, it is a string of small choices combined. We backslid occasionally and then recognized it faster. We kept the whiteboard but erased growth chart and wrote Team Waffles, which sounds like the kind of thing couples do right before friends delete their numbers, but it worked for us. When we forgot that love isn't a pie and carved it into competitive slices, we reminded each other that it's more like a campfire: the more hands you hold out, the warmer it gets, and no one has to blow out anyone else's flame to feel the heat. A month after the results, we signed up for a charity fun run that allowed dogs. We trained in the early mornings, not to chase an ex or our own fear, but because dawn gives you this feeling that the day might be kinder than you expect. The start line smelled like excitement and bacon from a nearby food truck. Waffles wore a bandana that said, "Coach." I wore a shirt that said, "Trying." We didn't set a time goal. We ran when it felt like running and walked when Waffles decided to say hello to every single Labrador in the county. At the finish they gave out little medals that were secretly bottle openers. Waffles tried to eat mine. I let him, because some things aren't meant to be protected from teeth marks. That night, tired and salt-sticky, we lay on the rug, the 3 of us in a pile that would be bad for the rug if not for the fact that the rug has seen worse. Mia traced a circle on my palm and said, "Do you realize we haven't said the word test in a week?" I realized we hadn't. I realized the envelope had become a coaster under the houseplant because life is ruthless that way. It takes the big, terrifying thing and makes it boring once you look it in the eye long enough. I closed my fingers around her hand and said, "Do you realize we built all this without a printout telling us we were allowed to?" Waffles sighed the contented sigh of a creature who had 2 warm humans, a full belly, and possibly an illicit piece of pancake hidden in his jowls. Later, when the world tried to pull us back into old patterns, too little sleep, too many emails, the temptation to check a phone during a conversation like it contains a better version of the person in front of you, we started saying, "Recall," like a joke and a prayer. One of us would say it, the other would look up, Waffles would look between us like the referee he is and wag his tail so hard his entire rear end wagged too. And we would come back. To the room. To each other. To the ridiculous, ordinary magic of a dog who wants nothing more than to be near the sound of your voice saying his name like it's the best word you know. When people ask what the test said, we tell them the truth in one sentence: it said he's ours. Not mine versus hers. Ours, in the way that the good parts of a life become a shared language, a shared joke, a shared responsibility. The test said what we already suspected the nights we slept on the floor during thunderstorms and the mornings we tied our shoes at 5:59 because that's when hope wakes up in this house. He loves whoever shows up, consistently, with patience, with a pocket full of treats and a willingness to be embarrassed in the park. He loves the person who is more fun in the moment and the person who carries the poop bag without complaining and the person who says, "Recall, because we promised we would." If you need to hear it from someone who spent a month staring at a whiteboard pretending one more bullet point could fix the hole in the boat. The lab can tell you breed and health and a charming little chart about preference, but it can't tell you how to hold your fear without handing it to the person you love like it's their job to solve. It can't measure the exact weight of your head on someone's shoulder while fireworks shake the neighborhood. It can't calculate the way a dog's paw on your knee means, "I choose you," and "I also choose the peanut butter in your hand," and how both can be true without canceling each other out. The envelope on our counter is just paper now. The real results run circles around the coffee table every evening, stop to stare at us with a question, and get the same answer every time. Yes, we're here. Yes, we'll try again. Yes, you're a good boy. Yes, we'll go for a walk. Yes, we're a team. Yes, we'll be more fun. Yes, we love you. Yes, we love each other. Yes.